Alright, the subject of today's video will be gas coverage, flow, cups, lenses, and everything else shiny. So, I want you to remember before we start that I am still learning things every day. I'm not the end-all, be-all authority on all things TIG welding. God, especially not TIG welding. But most importantly, I'm not the go-to guy when it comes to automotive work either. I am very explicitly a industrial welder. I do automotive stuff. You know, I've got a couple project cars and shit. I love cars, but you know, there's gonna be a whole lot of guys that are a whole lot better than me. So, this isn't gonna be a complex analysis and lesson on everything about argon, gas, etc. No, this is just going to be what I like, what I usually recommend to people, and how to set, how to diagnose, quick diagnose what's going on. So, first thing is materials and your cup sizing. Now, each type of material, whether it be aluminum, stainless, mild, which we're only going to talk about the three most common materials, but each one likes a different flavor, similar to us men and women. Some guys like fat chicks, some guys like skinny chicks, blonde, brunette, etc. Well, materials are the same way when it comes to gas coverage and flow. So we're going to start off with aluminum. Now, aluminum typically likes, it's really not too picky. It's whatever the lowest flow rate that you can get through your lens, or call it, and still have a stable arc and good coverage. So stainless steel, now that's a picky fellow. He likes the most amount of gas coverage and the highest flow rate that you could possibly fit in a given space. So when I'm doing stainless pipe, I usually use something ginormous, something that looks a bit goofy, like this guy. This guy is not too bad, but a lot of industrial welders would consider this, pretty wild to use on a daily basis. But in this world of stainless steel, that's pretty common, pretty normal. So for these, I'm running 25 to 30 CFH, whereas something like this, I'd be running, 10 to 15. So, mild steel, that's really up to interpretation. I like to run, a decent sized cup. I think this is a number 8. So I'll run a 7 or 8 mild steel, and just kind of play it by ear. Whatever I can fit in the given space. That's the big thing. Everything's going to be totally different. So. Now there's two types of cup materials that are most common, cup types rather. It's going to be your clear and your opaque. Now this is a clear. The main drawback of the clears are that they are fragile. You will break these fucking things. You drop it and it's in a million pieces, and they're a hell of a lot more expensive than your typical alumina or ceramic cup. But the advantages is that because they are clear, you can see through them. If you're welding in a tight spot or at the end of an edge, you're rolling over at the last second, and you're feeding filler rod from the bottom, sideways, and all that different shit, you can still see the tip of your tungsten and the edge of the puddle. And do not discount how much that can help you in a bad spot. Now, for those that aren't totally up to speed on things like this, they ain't never seen nothing like these. Well, you got to understand the difference between a collet body and a gas lens. Gas lens goes ahead and diffuses your gas before it even reaches a cup. Collet body shoots it out the sides, and it gets it close, but there's a lot of turbulence. this cuts out all the turbulence and lets you run a way larger cup. So, now on that, the bigger the cup, the harder it is to spread the gas out, you know, because it's going from this size opening to this size. Now how do you get that to spread out? Well, I'll just show you on this one because it's easier. So, focus. Alright, you see this guy's got that screen inside of it. Now, these screens are so when the gas hits it, there's a speed bump in their way, and they got to kind of, gas has to spread out and flow to the outside edges before it can hit the material. And that's, you know, how it reaches the edges of these cups. Now, the main advantage of these that, you know, well, the reason I use the biggest size I can use for every single project is it lets you run a huge stick out. So I can run stick outs, you know, I mean, it's very common on this size cup that I run stick outs like this. Just tons and tons and tons and tons of stick out. This lets you see everything before, after, and the sides of your weld. It also means that all you have to get in that weld area is this and not this giant ass, you know, cup. So sometimes that's, you know, the only way you can do things. Now, that's pretty much, you know, the basics on it. Now, I always pretty much exclusively use these days a gas lens. The rare times that I get a collet are going to be the times that I'm welding old, nasty, ugly stuff outside with a finger trigger and I just want to get it done and I don't really give a shit what it looks like. But, no, I mean, if you have, you know, the extra 40 or 50 bucks to change over to gas lenses, you shouldn't be worried about, you know, the little extra argon cost. And then the main difference, the main thing that's the deciding factor on all this shit is, I'd definitely say, your space constraint. That's the biggest deciding factor on what cup, lens, etc. to use. You know, stainless is just going to be the biggest that you can fit in there. Aluminum is, you know, most people like to run a itty bitty size, you know, itty bitty size opening. Yeah, this is only a 7, but most people run, you know, 5, and I've seen people run 4s before. But if you can fit that cup into your weld area, you should be going. Jesus Christ! Let me move the foot pedal over. If you can fit that cup into your given area, you should be going with the largest size cup that can fit and work comfortably in that space. In my opinion, that's my rule of thumb. That's how I always have operated, and it makes for a real, you know, stable situation. Easier welds. Make your job easier. Stop working so hard. So that's pretty much all I got to say about it. I'm sure you guys are going to chime in and tell me what's what and that I'm a fucking idiot. Don't really know what I'm talking about, but that's just what works for me.